The weak waste their lives trying to reason with the venomous. I will show you how the cunning remove them. Not with kindness, but with a precision that makes them wish they had never drawn near. In every court, in every council, there walks the toxic soul, poison in their smile, betrayal in their hand. They drain the mind, twist the tongue, and leave ruin in their shadow. The sentimental man believes he can change them. The wise ruler knows only to break their influence or crush their will. Tonight, we dissect the anatomy of this purge, not as an act of mercy, but as a surgical necessity for the preservation of power. Here, sentiment dies and cold strategy reigns. Script segment: identify the source of poison before it spreads. They never arrive with a trumpet. The toxic rarely announce themselves. They come softly. A smile too eager. A compliment that lingers a little too long. A story told not to inform, but to position themselves in your mind. And you think you are dealing with an ally. But by the time you realize what they truly are, their roots are already wrapped around the pillars of your life. History is a graveyard of rulers who misjudged such people. Consider Emperor Commodus of Rome. He allowed flatterers to whisper into his ear, to mold his perception of friend and foe. The empire decayed not because Rome lacked strength, but because the emperor failed to see the rot beneath the silk. You may believe you can simply deal with a toxic person once they reveal themselves. But understand this: the moment you see their fangs, they have already bitten you. The wise do not wait for poison to enter the blood. The wise learn to see the venom before it drips from the fang. How? By studying patterns that never lie. The toxic soul thrives in shadow. They rarely speak in the open, preferring whispers, half-phrases, and sideways glances. They seek to plant doubt in one heart at a time, never risking the exposure of a public confrontation. Have you noticed how some people always arrive carrying the words of others? This person said that about you. They're not loyal to you like I am. They pose as the deliverer of truth, yet their truth always inflames suspicion. This is their first weapon: divide before they attack. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, such individuals were more dangerous than enemy armies. An army can be met on the field. A whisper eats away at unity from within, invisible until the cracks are too wide to repair. Now, your instincts will tell you to listen, to be grateful for insider information. But that instinct is your first trap, because if they bring you such poison, they are surely carrying your words to someone else. Here lies the first discipline of power: never trust the one who thrives in conflict. Toxicity is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it wears the mask of devotion. A soldier who acts in your name, but bends the orders slightly to suit their will. An assistant who protects you from unnecessary details, until their control over information makes you dependent. In the modern world, these figures appear in offices, families, friendships. A colleague who warns you about others, but always when you are most vulnerable. A friend who demands loyalty yet keeps a ledger of your flaws. To identify them early, you must train the eye to catch small inconsistencies. Not the grand betrayal that comes later, but the subtle misalignments. A tone that changes when others enter the room. A smile that does not reach the eyes when you succeed. An eagerness to be near you when you hold advantage. Most people ignore these signs because they are small, easy to excuse. But a ruler of themselves and their world knows, small signs are the only warning you will get. Think of your circle as a fortress. Every person is a gate, a wall, or a crack. A gate can be opened, a wall can protect, but a crack will eventually break under pressure. When you find a crack, you do not watch it and hope for the best. You seal it, or you remove the stone entirely. The cost of ignoring this truth is not merely inconvenience. It is destruction. Poison spreads without noise. By the time you hear the cries of collapse, the venom has reached the heart. This is why the first skill of a strategist is perception. To sense danger before others feel it. To remove a threat before the threat knows it has been seen. And here is the most dangerous part. The toxic will test you. They will create small situations to measure your reaction. Do you confront directly? Do you let it pass? Do you take the bait and join their quiet war? Every response you give teaches them how to dismantle you. So you give them nothing. You observe. You document in your mind, and when the time comes you act without hesitation. Some will say this is paranoia. Let them think so. The grave is full of men who mistook vigilance for paranoia. You are not here to be liked. You are here to survive, and survival begins with knowing exactly where the poison lies. Because once you see it, you will know exactly how to kill it. But killing is an art of its own. And that, my friend, is the next lesson. Script segment, control the arena, control the outcome. A fight is never just a fight. It is the stage, the rules, the witnesses, the timing. These decide the victor before the first blow is struck. The fool believes victory is about strength alone. The strategist knows it is about where the strength is applied, and when. Every confrontation, whether in politics, business, or personal life, is an arena. If you do not choose that arena, someone else will. And in theirs, you are already at a disadvantage. Think of Hannibal at Cannae. He did not meet Rome's massive army on equal terms. He lured them into a trap, a killing field of his design, where their numbers became their weakness. Rome thought they were chasing victory. They were only marching into the jaws of annihilation. This is the heart of the second principle. You never confront the toxic on their ground. You force them into terrain where every stone, every shadow, every rule bends in your favor. Ask yourself, when you engage an opponent, are you reacting to their move, or are you setting the terms? Because reaction is slavery in the realm of power. The toxic thrive in chaos because chaos is their native terrain. It allows them to twist truth, hide behind confusion, and rally sympathy. If you let them choose the battlefield, they will choose disorder. Instead, you must impose structure. Structure is the cage they cannot breathe in. In the courts of Florence, those who survived accusations and intrigues were rarely the loudest defenders of their own innocence. They were the ones who forced the discussion into formal hearings, documented exchanges, and witnesses of their choosing. Suddenly, the shadow games could not survive the light. Even in the smallest disputes, this principle holds. If a colleague tries to discredit you with rumors, you do not argue in the hallway where others can overhear. You summon them to a formal meeting with superiors or allies present. You transform whispers into a stage where they must speak plainly, and plain speech is the death of a skilled manipulator. The arena can also be time. The toxic thrive on urgency, catching you off balance. They want you to respond now before you can think. So you deny them that. You slow the pace, you create distance, you dictate when the conversation happens. Delay is not weakness. It is sharpening the blade before the duel. Control can also come from the way you frame the narrative. If a toxic figure accuses you, do not answer the accusation directly. Redirect it. Make the conversation about their credibility, their motives, their record of behavior. Shift the spotlight. Once you control the topic, you control the mind of the audience. Consider chess. A novice chases pieces, reacting to threats. A master controls the center of the board, forcing the opponent to move where the master wants them. In life, the center is the environment, physical, social, and psychological. In relationships, the arena is often emotional space. If you allow them to speak to you when you are angry, tired, or emotionally exposed, you are fighting on their terms. Choose the moment when you are calm, deliberate, and armored in composure. Never underestimate how environment shifts perception. A manipulator in a private conversation may seem confident, even dominant. Place them in front of others they wish to impress, and suddenly their arrogance turns to restraint. The arena shapes the mask they wear. Do not merely think of control as defense. It is offense. You can create arenas that force your opponent into mistakes. Invite them into situations where their flaws are unavoidable, where their temper, their dishonesty, or their arrogance becomes visible to all. They will defeat themselves, and you will never need to raise your voice. Remember this. Power is rarely taken in a clash of equals. It is taken when one side dictates the conditions so thoroughly that the other side has no real choice at all. So before you engage the toxic, stop. Ask yourself, whose ground am I standing on? Who chose this moment? Who controls what can be said and how it will be remembered? If the answer is not you, then you have already lost. Control the arena and you control the story. Control the story and you control the outcome. But the game does not end when you win the confrontation. Victory can be temporary if the opponent still has the means to recover. That is why the next lesson is not about the fight itself. It is about making sure the enemy never rises again. Script segment, cut without warning, cut without remorse. When the time comes, hesitation is fatal. Not for your body, but for your power. The toxic survive because their targets hesitate. They think, perhaps I should give them one last chance. One more warning. One more explanation. This is mercy dressed as weakness. History remembers those who acted, not those who debated. Consider the fate of the Roman general Germanicus. Admired by the people, he tolerated Tiberius' loyalists plotting in the shadows. He waited, he warned, he hoped to reconcile. By the time he moved, it was too late. Poison in his cup, delivered with a smile. You think you will see the perfect moment to strike, but the perfect moment is not given, it is taken. And when it arrives, you must move so quickly that your enemy wonders whether you had planned their fall from the very beginning. Why without warning? Because warning is the courtesy of the equal. You do not owe equality to the one who seeks your ruin. The toxic soul uses time against you. Tell them you are displeased, and they will cloak themselves in charm. Tell them you see their schemes, and they will twist the narrative, rally allies, or vanish into the shadows until you lower your guard. Warning is not justice. It is an invitation to counterattack. That is why the decisive cut must be invisible until the moment it lands. In politics, this is called the coup de main. The sudden seizure of power before the opponent can organize resistance. In human relationships, it is removing someone's access, influence, or authority before they even know their position is in danger. Perhaps it is the business partner you strip of decision-making rights overnight. The confidant whose access to information you quietly shut down. The subordinate whose role is restructured so they can no longer undermine you. You make the cut, and then you present them with the new reality as if it had always been so. They are left stunned, and in that stunned silence, your power consolidates. And why without remorse? Because remorse is the luxury of those who can afford to lose. If you have correctly identified the toxic, then their removal is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. You are not destroying a person, you are destroying a threat. Do not misunderstand. This does not mean cruelty for cruelty's sake. The blade is sharp, but it must be precise. You do not burn the entire field to kill a single weed. You cut exactly where the infection lies. There is a psychology to this precision. The moment of removal must be absolute. If you fire them, they are gone that day. If you block them, they are cut off from all channels immediately. If you end a personal tie, you leave no openings for closure or final conversations. These are merely doorways through which the toxic will re-enter. In the courts of the Medici, survival depended on this exact discipline. A rival was not humiliated in public before the kill. That would invite defense from others. They were simply absent the next morning. No trial, no spectacle. Only silence where they once stood. In your own life, this means acting in ways that seem sudden to the world, but have been coldly calculated by you in advance. It means removing sentiment from the equation and understanding that the longer a threat exists, the more chance it has to grow. Many will call you ruthless. Let them. Ruthlessness in the face of treachery is merely clarity. Remember, the toxic are not bound by the rules you cling to. They will not hesitate to cut you when it suits them. They will not lose sleep over your fall. Why, then, should you weep over theirs? When the blow is struck, you do not gloat. You do not explain. You let the silence do your speaking. Because nothing is more unsettling to an enemy than being removed without ceremony, without argument, without even acknowledgement of their worth as an adversary. The absence of remorse denies them the dignity of thinking they mattered to you. And once the cut is made, you do not look back. You turn your eyes to the future, because dwelling on the past only invites regret, and regret invites hesitation in the next strike you will inevitably have to make. This is not cruelty. This is survival in its purest form. But cutting the toxic is not enough. A severed weed can grow back if its roots remain. And in the realm of power, roots are influence, alliances, and memory. Which brings us to the next lesson: how to seal the ruins behind you so they can never rise again. Script segment: exploit their weakness for your advantage. It is not enough to defend yourself against the toxic. The wise do more than survive. They feed on the weaknesses of their enemies. Why simply remove a threat when you can use it to strengthen your position? Every person carries within them a crack. For some, it is vanity. For others, fear. For others still, it is the desperate need to be seen as loyal, competent, or irreplaceable. The toxic are no exception. In fact, they often have more cracks than most, because the very nature of manipulation demands instability. History rewards those who exploit these fractures. Consider César Borgia. He rarely destroyed an enemy outright if that enemy's weakness could serve him. A proud man could be lured into overextending himself. A greedy man could be fed false promises until he hung himself with his own ambition. Borgia understood. Why waste a sword when you can make your enemy wield it against himself? So, what is the first step in this art? Observation. You do not look only at their attacks. You watch their patterns when they are relaxed, distracted, or unaware they are being studied. Do they crave praise? Then offer it, but only in exchange for information. Do they fear irrelevance? Then let them feel important by doing your work for you, unaware they are serving your interests. Do they hunger for recognition? Then put them in situations where they can shine, yet in a way that makes them dependent on your stage. The toxic seek control. The irony is they are often the easiest to control once you understand what string to pull. In modern life, this might mean giving a competitive colleague a project that flatters their ego but drains their energy, leaving them too exhausted to undermine you elsewhere. It might mean feeding the gossip with selective truths, steering their whispers toward enemies you both share. They believe they are manipulating the room, while every word they speak furthers your design. Psychologically, people cling hardest to what they fear losing. A toxic person's survival depends on influence. Threaten that influence subtly, not by removing it, but by making it conditional on pleasing you, and you turn a dangerous adversary into an unwitting servant. There is also the weapon of temptation. Every toxic soul has a vice that clouds their judgment. It might be wealth, flattery, or the thrill of risk. By dangling this vice, you can lead them exactly where you want them to go. In the courts of Europe, diplomats often sent gifts to rivals, not out of kindness, but to bind them in obligation. A gift is never free. It is a hook in the mind. Once they accept it, they have stepped into your web, and every move they make thereafter is framed by the fact that they are in your debt. In your own life, gifts can take the form of favors, opportunities, or access. Offer them something they value, but only enough to keep them leaning toward you, never enough to free them from needing you. You may ask, why not simply crush them and be done with it? Because an enemy in ruins is useless to you. An enemy in chains is an asset. Their ambition, their skill, their reach, all can be redirected to serve your rise. And when you exploit their weakness, you do more than protect yourself. You send a message to others watching. You show that you do not merely defend, you command. And in power, perception is as valuable as reality. Be careful though. Exploitation is an art that demands patience. Move too soon, and you reveal your hand. Push too hard, and desperation may drive them to recklessness. The best exploitation is so subtle that they believe they are acting entirely of their own will. There is a certain pleasure in this. Watching them chase what they think is victory, not realizing they are walking exactly where you have led them. By the time they see the truth, it is too late. They are too entangled in the web you have spun. And here lies the beauty of this method. A toxic person who believes they are winning will not fight you. They will fight for you, all the while thinking they are serving themselves. But remember, when you no longer need them, you must be prepared for the final step. Because if you release them freely, they will remember the chains you once held. And enemies with memories are enemies that return, which is why the next lesson is not about how to use them, but how to erase every trace they ever existed in your world. Script segment, shield the ruins behind you. Victory is not the end. It is only the beginning of memory. And memory is dangerous. The toxic you have removed will not remember the truth of why they fell. They will remember only the wound. And a wound remembered is a weapon waiting for the day it can be used. This is why the final act is not simply to defeat your enemy, but to erase every pathway through which they might return. History is littered with leaders who failed to do this. Consider Sulla, the Roman dictator. He crushed his opponents, exiled them, seized their property, yet left their families and allies intact. Years later, the sons of his enemies rose against Rome in revenge. The embers he thought were cold still smoldered in the dark. The first step in sealing ruins is to destroy not only the figure, but the foundation that supported them. Their network, their resources, their credibility. Leave them alive if you must, but ensure they have no means to gather strength. How? You control the story of their fall. If you let them tell it, they will paint themselves as a victim, a martyr, a hero wronged by your cruelty. You must move faster. You define the narrative before they can. Make it public, make it convincing, and make it stick. In the Renaissance courts, a fallen rival was often remembered not for their defeat, but for the scandal attached to it. Scandal carefully crafted by their conqueror. A whisper of corruption here, a suggestion of betrayal there. By the time the victim protested, the world had already decided who they were. In the modern world, you achieve this by shaping perception in every sphere that matters: social, professional, and personal. When they speak, others must doubt before they even hear the words. The damage must not be physical. It must be reputational, because a ruined reputation is a prison without walls. The second step is to remove the soil in which they could regrow. If they thrive on influence, cut their connections. If they thrive on money, close the channels that feed them. If they thrive on admiration, quietly erode the audience that gives it to them. Do not do this with a single blow. Do it so gradually that they cannot pinpoint when the ground began to crumble beneath their feet. There is a psychology to this erosion. When a person cannot identify a single event that ruined them, they cannot rally others to their cause. They will instead consume themselves, wondering when and how their fortune faded. The third step, never leave symbols of their former power intact. In war, this means burning the fortress you take so no army can use it against you later. In life, this means dismantling the systems they built. If you inherit their position, you change its structure. If you keep their allies, you give them new roles and new loyalties. The past must not remain in recognizable form. Think of it like removing a weed. If you pull it out and leave fragments of the root, it will grow back. So you dig deep, you disturb the soil, and you plant something new in its place. Not only is the weed gone, it is impossible to imagine it was ever there. Do not mistake this for cruelty. It is prevention. For if you have learned anything by now, it is that those who seek to harm you rarely stop simply because they failed once. They retreat, they rebuild, they wait. But if you have sealed the ruins, if the bridges are burned, the paths destroyed, the names forgotten, they have nowhere to return to. Yes, there will be those who call this overkill. Those who say, they are no longer a threat, why go further? These people do not understand the nature of power. Power is not simply taken, it must be secured. And security is never gentle. When you seal the ruins, you do more than protect yourself from the fallen. You send a silent message to all who might rise against you. It says, defy me, and there will be nothing left of you to rebuild. This message is worth more than any single victory. It turns would-be enemies into hesitant observers. It makes the cost of betrayal so high that even the boldest think twice. And yet, sealing the ruins does not mean you erase the memory entirely from your own mind. No. You keep the lesson. You remember the path they took, the methods they used, the mistakes they made, so that when a new threat appears, you recognize it instantly. Because another will appear, and when they do, you will not need to learn the game again. You will already be playing it at a level they cannot imagine. Which leads us to the final truth. Once you have mastered the removal of enemies, the control of arenas, the precision of cuts, the exploitation of weakness, and the sealing of ruins, you will no longer be merely defending yourself. You will be shaping the world itself. Power is not taken in the open. It is shaped in the shadows. The greatest control is the kind they never feel. Until it is too late to escape, you have learned to see the poison before it spreads, to choose the arena and bend it to your will, to cut swiftly without warning or remorse, to turn an enemy's weakness into your strength, and to seal the ruins so no ghost of their power can return. This is not kindness. It is not cruelty. It is necessity. The world is ruled not by those who fight the hardest, but by those who decide when, where, and how the fight will end, and the cleverest rulers never let anyone realize they were being ruled at all. Now, I ask you, what is the most subtle way you have ever controlled a situation without others knowing? Write it in the comments, subscribe for more strategies the Nav fear to hear, and share this video, so others may learn or be warned.